Well, hi there. You're watching and or listening to Podcast is Broken, a weekly podcast where we try to make Canadian news and politics funner. I'm Brittlestar.
I'm Steve Boots, and as always, more fun.
I'm Lisa. It's too hot, so it's okay. It's okay.
That was pretty good.
It's too hot to care.
I mean,
It's too hot to care.
We did notice that you and I are wearing, for listeners at home, Lisa and I are wearing essentially the same shirt.
Yep. We did not plan this.
We didn't plan that, exactly.
It's two minds. We're working. We're connected.
Do you have AC in your house, Lisa?
I do. I do.
Maybe you thought about turning it on?
Yeah, I probably should. It's on one side of the house. I'm on the other side of the house.
You've got different. Oh God, you've got different wings in your house. Is that what's happening?
What?
Yeah, she's got separate ACs for different wings of the house.
Exactly.
Then obviously the servants' quarters aren't air conditioned. So,
no. I mean, you got to keep
them
on their toes.
That's in the back quarter. They have to crawl out there. Yeah.
So did anything exciting happen in the news?
Nah, it's been pretty chill.
It's been pretty chill, hasn't it?
Pretty quiet.
Same old, I think. Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. I just saw something here about an assassination attempt on the former president of the U.S.
What?
I know. You guys might have missed that on the news at some point.
Yeah, if you've been living under a rock or in a cave,
somebody on
very real
Twitter
possibilities.
had said that it was reminded them of the Saturday Night Live sketch about Buckwheat's been shot after Reagan got shot.
Yeah.
And they just kept cutting into the episode continuously with like, we have nothing new to report, but here's a recap of what's happened so far.
Well, that's it. There's been no new information for so long, and like it's just been basically watching the most conspiratorial people in the universe spin their tires as hard as possible.
Yeah.
Like we are watching the whole Zapruder thing play out right in front of our faces.
Yeah.
It's everywhere though. It's on all sides.
Oh, it's not limited to any specific group.
No.
It's just like wild speculation.
This is the first attempted whatever since social media, right? Since the internet. And so it's not like we had to watch it on the 6 o'clock news like we did with Reagan, right? So
I mean, I'm going to contest that. It's the first one in the West. Well, not even the West. Just North America. Like, Shinzo Abe was assassinated, 2 years ago?
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. You're right. You're right.
But what was interesting is you're talking about conspiracy theories, but surely you both looked at the footage and went, "Are you just gonna let his head stand up like that? Just gonna let him stand up like that? You're gonna let him stick his hand up? You're gonna let him like pose for the cameras a little bit? Is that what's happening?" That was a bit weird to me. I'm not suggesting it was conspiratorial and there was like a big setup and it was all staged. I don't think so at all. However, I think as Robin Urbach said in the Globe, she was saying that he knows his moments. And I was like, that's giving him a lot of credit in that moment. But I think she's right, though.
Well, so this is it. Is all he knows is showmanship, right? And he apparently like stuck his fist in the air and started yelling fight, fight, fight after panicking about his shoes for a second.
Yeah.
And it's like, as soon as he got his head screwed on straight, his mind went straight to showmanship, to this is a moment.
Yeah.
I can do a thing.
Fascinating.
But like, it's also interesting to watch the footage because in that moment of panic, everybody reacts differently. And like the conspiracy folks are running with it.
Sure.
But what it really is just like entirely reasonable reactions to a terrifying situation. Like one person doesn't even really clock it and takes out their phone. Another person starts yelling random things. Like and Trump asked about his shoes a whole bunch. Like people get in these panicky moments. So I was like, this is in no way equated, but I was a lifeguard for a long time. Mm-hmm. And when you pull people out of these panicky moments, they say the weirdest things, man.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Because they're not thinking straight. They're not like people do unpredictable things. So I don't buy the conspiracy theories so much as I buy a bunch of different balls were dropped all in sequence.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's the thing, right? I mean, the reaction from the Secret Service was odd, right? Like, I mean, when you go back and you see even Secret Service walking people through crowds, there's more attention to that person. I was more focused, not on Trump, but on the crowd behind him. Like, nobody really dropped, right? Like, they were all just kind of like looking around and like,
They all kind of half duck, like a baseball had been hit, a foul baseball had been hit, or something.
Exactly.
I genuinely think they didn't realize what was going on was real. I genuinely think in that moment it happened so fast that they're just like, what the hell is happening?
I think you're right. I think you're totally right. I think that was, to me, what stuck out was that after he did his fist in the air and yelled "fight, fight," and they got the pictures and fantastic pictures, like removing all the meaning, just phenomenal pictures.
That individual photo that everybody instantly knows the photo you're talking about.
Yeah, you absolutely.
Just a remarkable photograph, regardless of your opinions about anything. Yeah. It's a great photo.
He does that, and in the clips he says "fight, fight," and then the crowd cheers. Like, this is all just part of the show. And I said to Shannon, I was like, when she was done vacuuming, I said to her, "This is just like the WWE. This is just like the WWE.
Yes,
it seems like they're watching it, and it's just entertainment to them. They're like, well, I'm okay, and God, what a show, eh? Wasn't that amazing?
They think it's a bit. I really do think they thought it was a bit.
Or at least that's how they were processing it. Even though it was like, oh my God, someone tried to shoot the president, but it's like,
well, and maybe Steve's right. It's like that moment in time when you can't really conceptualize what's happening, right? And so you just act like a moron. But I don't know.
You're sitting and watching the former president speak, and shots are fired. To me, the incomprehensibility of what's happening in that moment, if I froze and was just like, what the hell, I wouldn't be that surprised.
Oh, honestly. Same. I would freeze.
I
don't think I would know how to process it or what to do. And it would be too weird. So before we go any further down conspiratorial rabbit holes here, I think let's just do one last tag on our way out of it into Canada, which
accessing the tinfoil hats immediately.
Exactly. Is his ear bandage. Did you see his ear bandage at the RNC?
It looks like he put an
his always with wings. Yeah, no.
It looked to me
good
like
absorption.
He was going to say to somebody, he was doing a bit that he was going to say to somebody beside him, you see my tea bag? Something like that. Just something to sort of.
Although I will say, when he
here a second ago.
So to me, you hear all these conspiratorial people talking about it being staged or a bit or a put on or whatever. When he walked out at the RNC, he looked very uncomfortable to be walking in front of a crowd.
No, oh my God, can you blame him?
He looked so uneasy. It's like, no, you can't fake that. You can't fake that. This guy is so sincerely rattled. You can see it on his face.
Oh my God, how could you not?
He's not a talented actor.
No. Until, of course, he did fall asleep. Did you see the clip of him falling asleep? The RNC thing?
No, I didn't.
Sitting there with his eyes closed. And it was like, he's just resting his eyes. He's been resting them for a long time.
He's trying,
a little bit of a deep sleep.
He got a bug in his eye and he's trying to suffocate it.
Well, all those pain meds for the injury, right? That would knock you out.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, I found the ear bandage a step too far. I was like, come on, man. You apparently didn't have it on the day before for golf. And it's like,
right. Yeah. You were fine for golf.
You don't really need it. You don't need to prove, like, the fact that someone tried to kill you. That's enough. That's terrible in its own. We don't need to see a wound to believe you. It's like,
no,
we get it.
Well, and did you see Melania's little, not little, 2-page,
the deeply surreal letter to the American public?
Holy cow. Yeah. I was like,
my fellow Americans.
Oh my God.
It did read really well if you read it with the accent.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
with her indecipherable accent.
Yes. Yeah. It was like some Martin Short character. But what was interesting about the Twitter reaction was there's all those conspiracies. There was all those, different people saying it's a false flag. It's a stage setup. And it's like, someone died. And regardless of what people think of the guy that died, someone died, and no one should die. And for politics, absolutely not. Yeah. And especially at a rally like that. That's supposed to just be a rally. That should be, no one should be worried about their life.
People brought their kids.
Exactly. It's inexcusable and it's unfathomable.
And I feel like if you're going somewhere the president is, you can generally assume that's a very safe place to be, right?
I don't.
Historically.
No, I would think the exact opposite.
I think the exact opposite
in my mind, no, man. If you're I've never been particularly close to the president, but I've been to DC when the president was in the White House.
Yeah.
And like the security is bananagrams.
Yeah.
You are impossibly safe when you're that close to somebody that sensitive. And so that's at least the assumption that you walk around with. And so to see it lapse that badly, now I don't feel that way, but like, whew.
See, I would think going to that type of rally, I wouldn't potentially be so worried about someone external coming in and doing harm. I'd be more worried about the people attending the rally doing harm, right?
Yeah.
Like they're kind of...
I'd be worried about some wackadoo wanting to be throwing hands, but I'm pretty sure they have metal detectors at those things. Pretty confident.
I don't think so.
I mean, they, from what I was reading, I mean, we don't have to.
They're not like Yosemite Samming into the air.
I mean, that's the great sort of, contradiction of America is that it's like they have open carry, but all the government buildings and government events are like, no guns.
Yeah, right.
Not here.
You keep that outside.
Exactly. But thinking about all the conspiracy theories and all the stuff that happened on Twitter specifically, and they were just flying left and right. There was just so much of it. And then there were some people who reacted and posted some things that I saw immediately. I saw David Musgrove saying, people here got to take a breath. And other people saying, and like, don't post anything right now. And other people saying, like, there's a drafts folder for a reason. Like, just post it to your drafts. Get it out of your system.
For every one of those, there were other folks who were like, tweet it all, baby.
Yeah, totally. And there was a couple of people who tweeted out things that were basically sort of said that they were sorry that it was a failed attempt of assassination, and that that's just not something you say.
No, and that's it. Even if you think it, it's an inward thought, right? Like,
and even if you think it, you're thinking it going, well, and you're going, God, that's terrible. I shouldn't think that way. I shouldn't. You definitely don't commit it to writing.
Yeah.
But it speaks to the emotion of everything, right? There is such intense feeling about people and what their potential is for the world that like I would never, right? Like I don't like putting that kind of vibe out into the world, right? Of harm to somebody else.
Not. Yeah.
But I can understand where people probably like caught their breath and then was like, oh, right? Like,
yeah,
in that moment, not thinking about the consequence of what would happen after or any of that kind of stuff. I get it. But again, like you said, there's a reason why, when you type an email in anger, you walk away and come back and reread it.
Well, the thing is, even if you are like some hardcore anti-Trump person, if you don't realize that something like that happening to him would make things immensely worse in every way.
Absolutely.
If you are rooting for that, you are absolutely off your rocker. Like you have no idea what you're talking about because it would galvanize his folks in a way that is just terrifying.
But that's the emotion of it though, right? Is that you were, for a moment, whomever, were like you caught your breath on it, right? Like maybe this will make it go away. But we know that wouldn't be the case. I mean, he's going to be a martyr whether he did or didn't succumb to whatever happened, right? So, but I get it. I get the emotion behind it.
What's your take on Poilievre tweeting, I'm happy the suspected shooter is dead?
I think Poilievre is a piece of garbage, right? Because
that's like a bonkers thing to tweet, right? Like,
well, he's a bonkers man. I'm sorry, he's a wacko man.
It's a
he's a wacko.
Wacko.
Yeah. I went through and I looked at leaders around the world and the commentaries that they put out there, right? And the messaging was quite similar to what our prime minister put out there.
It's pretty standard stuff,
right? Yeah. You have somebody proofread it. I don't know.
There's usually like a media team who are like, we're going to write the most inoffensive thing imaginable,
right? No, not him.
Although,
not him.
On the flip side, I also think, Justin Trudeau's statements about like, he's reached out and is wishing Trump well and all that stuff. It does feel a little disingenuous when they're like, we've got to fight against authoritarianism and fascism and all this stuff. And then they're like, well, we have contacted the authoritarian to wish him well.
Well, you don't want to wish him death. You don't wish him death.
No.
And then also you have to sell him a bunch of maple syrup next week. That's the problem. That's true.
I think that's a standard though. Again, you can have differences of political opinion, but when something serious happens, right? That's what people are supposed to do. You're supposed to come together. right?
Yeah, them's the rules to some extent.
He's not going to send him a muffin basket, but I'm sure he was going to, say, oh, glad you're well.
I figure he tweeted that whilst catching a glimpse of himself in the rearview mirror of a truck with his aviator sunglasses on and his navy blue sports coat, and thought, I'm basically a Canadian David Caruso.
Oh my God. Did you see the photos he posted of himself
in the rain?
Running in the rain? Like what? Like just these high res photos of him just soaking wet in the rain. What are you doing?
I mean,
with the drops, with the raindrops. Yeah, it's a lot.
The most sensual photos of a prime ministerial candidate.
Oh, please don't use that term.
They were just glistening.
I find it really funny when politicians of all stripes post any sort of things that would be deemed thirst traps. They're just
It's so funny. When
I don't need that.
Was it Paul Ryan who posed with the tiny dumbbells?
Yes,
I think it was Time Magazine.
Yeah.
It's just what are you doing?
But if you have to put that much effort into making it look like a thirst trap that you have to superimpose the raindrops over your picture, ew. No, thank you.
It's entertainment. It's entertainment, and that's the terrible thing. That's the WWE part of it. And there's nothing wrong with the WWE because they are just actually entertainment.
So, total sidebar, but one time I took my wife to a WWE event. We went to one together, like a in-house show or whatever. And she was like, I don't know any of the people. Will I know who to cheer for? And I was like, oh, they'll let you know. And the first person comes out and he's like, it's terrible to be here in the city that smells like it sounds. And the whole crowd's like, boo. And she's like, oh.
Is he the bad guy?
I get it. Yeah,
I see how this works. Okay.
Is he just speaking truth or is he the bad guy?
Has he been here before? I don't know.
It was the best.
But I mean, the comment that Polyev made that I'm happy that the suspected shooter is dead was such a weird comment to make. It was again, as you've got to have someone going, let's maybe take that line out. We don't need to say that.
And I think there's something to be said about the fact, I'm not going to, I don't want anything that I'm about to say to be taken as justifying or anything like that. But there's something to be said for it. Sounds like it's a young man who went down the alt-right pipeline.
Yeah.
And got eaten up by it. And there are a lot of people out there just like that. And it's not so much, it's it's contemptible in some ways, but it's also really sad.
Oh, it's sad, full stop.
It's terrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's a consequence of what's happening. It's that indoctrination of disenfranchised people. Oh, don't even get me started. Of disenfranchised people, right? Where you're bringing them into this false belief and false narrative of the Polyevs and the Trumps. When the day-to-day reality of it, I mean, whatever. Who knows why? All we know is it was a bad shot. So anyway.
But listen, I think we can all agree that Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta, her words brought us together when she said, I certainly hope that some of the progressive politicians here are careful of their language because they've been talking about conservative politicians in the same way and they need to dial it down. And that's what she said to a bunch of reporters at a Premier's conference in Halifax.
Noted moderate Danielle Smith.
Right? Danielle Smith.
Alberta Premier Danielle
Smith. Pictured here being an absolute asshole.
Lisa, was it you that said that one of her tells is when she goes, look. Yeah.
Look as she's going to lie, right?
Yeah. I watched a question thing there with her and Evie from BC.
Yeah.
And that was everything that she answered was, well, look.
Look.
And I was like, the first one, I'm like, oh, maybe she's got some sense. And the second one's like, no, this is just to take you down a different path.
She's winging it.
Of course. Yeah. The irony in her statement, she has the depth of a shallow puddle. To put it out there that somehow this idea of the radical left and all this kind of stuff and progressives need to tone it down. Would you like me to pull up the files? Would you like me to pull up the files? Because I will, of all the rhetoric and borderline threats that have come from that side of the table. That's Danny. That's our Danny.
It's one of those things where it's like, I think it's impossible to have a conversation about this sort of stuff without talking about the rhetoric coming. Like there is, pretty intense rhetoric coming from both sides. We can't pretend it isn't, but it's not equal by any measure.
No.
And Donald Trump was at the heart of it, right?
Absolutely.
He's made as many violent, statements as any politician, or threatening statements, or like, the idea of stochastic terrorism, of that sort of like, this group is bad, this person is bad, something should be done about this person or group. And then they sort of act like it's all deniable and they had nothing to do with it. And now they're acting surprised that there's consequences. And it's scary to think that, this is unlikely to be the end of this sort of stuff. And that's really scary to think.
But maybe obviously it's easier to project than to have some insight, clearly. But I was going through some of the stuff that Danny has said, right? I mean, she's accused Stephen Guilbeault of treason.
Called him a zealot.
Right? She, when Tucker the fucker was here, she basically said, you better put Stephen in your sight.
She said,
Tucker.
Put him in your crosshairs.
Yeah, put him in your cross. Yeah. So I mean, like, and then there's so much more. I mean, there's so much more. We don't have time. It could be a whole Danny show of
Press
things
Progress,
that she's done.
If you're curious, did a big breakdown of some of the stuff she said. Like she was talked about how she was, rooting for the Coots blockade, which
that there needs to be a win. Yeah.
A very scary thing.
She said that, I can't. She wanted to put, because it's like, there's so much. Like she wanted to put people who had vaccine mandates and are CMO in jail.
Right.
There's so much divisiveness that she has caused.
Yeah, she wanted to lock up Dina Hinshaw. She talked about Dina because they were preventing access to a church in some way. Yeah. Dina Hinshaw and the police who barricaded it to get arrested.
Criminal charges,
Just a couple of things.
But progressives, tone it down.
The unvaccinated were the most discriminated against. Alberta has suffered the way that Indigenous people have suffered. Like, I mean, she's done so much, right? I could go on and on. So for her to have the absolute fucking audacity to stand there in front of people and say it's the progressives that need to tone it down, go fuck yourself, Danielle Smith. You are the problem.
How do you really feel?
Well, I'm trying to hold it back.
It's hard to get a read.
I mean, I think it's ridiculous, and there's two things that come to mind when I hear Danielle Smith saying this stuff, and I see Republicans in the USA saying similar messaging. And there's one is it's the face-eating leopard party thing. It's like the shit. We've trained these people to be crazy, and turns out they are. We did a great job. And that's
so they turn on you. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that's literally, I mean, I remember at the time saying, for a number of examples, saying, when you recruit an army of idiots, you end up with an army of idiots. And it's, especially when you're feeding them half truths and misinformation, not even half truth, just misinformation. And that part I think is, I mean, if it wasn't so dangerous, it'd be funny, because they are kind of reaping what they've sown so far, which is terrible. And I don't think that, God forbid it, everything else happens. But that's the danger that I think a lot of us have been shouting about, saying you can't talk like this. Your words have meaning, they have power. You can't just keep saying stuff and expect nothing to happen. Things will happen. And everyone, I think, aside from the select few on those sides, have realized that. And I think even when you think of, Trudeau mentioning the people who were doing the convoy protest and saying it was for vaccinations and all that kind of stuff, and then saying it's, a small group of like racists and stuff. And it's like, he's not saying, hey, listen, we got to get rid of these people. We got to do them in. It's like, it's like we're trying to all get along. We're trying to actually work out, survive this thing. So there's that aspect to it. And then the other aspect to it, to me, which is more scary, I think, is the fact that we've talked about this before, that the three of us and people similar to us consume a tremendous amount of news and tremendous amount of media. And we are very, very aware of, and I think I'm at the bottom of that tier of awareness of what's happening in the world and what has happened over the course of the past, 4 years, 10 years, whatever. I think the majority of people are going to pick up purely on Danielle Smith saying that and going, oh yeah, I guess she's probably right. Mm-hmm. And that's the scary part. It's like, well, no, we're just forgetting all the other stuff. And there's a huge swath of people who are like, I don't remember saying anything else like bad, really. I think I remember this because she just said it. That's the scary part to me, is that there's, people have no idea what's happening.
That's the worst part of grifters, is that they're convincing.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I mean, the reporter, she made her comment and then the reporter asked, like what or whatever, for her to give examples. And she got very intense about her answer. There needs to be pushback, though. And that's the problem. Right. And I don't know if the media has the ability to do the pushback, or if that is going to sit with those of us who don't give a shit and are going to push back to show the hypocrisy of what they're saying. And Steve's got a whole bunch of time now. But like, honestly, though, I mean, if
and doing nothing else,
right? Just fluffing his beard and
don't act like
making
you're not jealous.
I am jealous.
But that's the thing. I mean, it's easy to get the soundbite. We've talked about this multiple times. You can make the statement, but that needs to be pushed, right? You can't just make the statements. I wonder if there's now, having seen what happened in the States, if there is just a slight fear on the part of this alt-wrong group that are pushing these narratives and agendas of the federal government doesn't care about you and we're going to do all these fantastic things. Because I kind of wonder, I mean, we can guess about what happened to this gentleman in the States that did what he did. But if you buy into the false promises and narratives of, this is going to be better and then it ends up not being better. Mm-hmm. Do you then turn your anger on the people who sold you a false promise?
How could you not?
And if I was Pierre, I'd be very fucking worried about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because his following are unstable.
This is it.
And so
they've been fed lies and fed promises that, fed non-solutions. And I think that's the dangerous side of it. It's like, especially with the, supporting the anti-vax movement and stuff like that. It's like, you're going to have when people's kids start getting sick, they're going to go, what the hell?
And if your whole bit is just pointing people's anger in different directions, at a certain point, it's going to point back at you. Like, it just has to.
But that's what I wonder.
For pointing back at you. Isn't that how it
that's
goes?
What they say. Yeah. Don't assume because you make it.
That's from The Odd Couple.
Right. But that's the narrative, right? Is to spin this truth, put out the supposed truth, put out these acts, the tax, and these little sound bites to get people interested in what you're doing, make all these false promises to garner that acceptance and, the votes, because he's pushing for 2025. We know that. Mm-hmm. But what happens when it doesn't work out? Right? Like, if I were him, I'd be thinking about 2027. Like, don't even worry about 2025. I'd be worried about 2027 when nothing has changed and potentially has gotten worse. And now
that's it, right? Like, axe the tax, then what? Like, when that doesn't work, people are going to be pissed.
Well, I think that's the dangerous part, is that you're going to have the vast majority of people that he's promised the world to and promised the moon to. Those things don't come through. The vast majority won't care because they'll be busy about their own lives and doing their own thing. Mm-hmm. They'll be like, oh, whatever, it doesn't matter. I guess somebody else stopped them from being able to do those things. But it's the
for those damn liberals.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the people who are at the the outliers in those groups that are like the young guy in the States this past weekend. It's like, why is he turning? You know what I mean? Why is he angry? He's not able to process this. He's not, for whatever reason. I'm not making excuses for what he did whatsoever, but I'm just saying there's probably reasons behind why he did what he did and thought that it was the right thing to do. Even though it wasn't, evidently. So, I mean, that's the scary part. And I think you're right. That's the scary part to me.
But I think that also gets to an element of why Poilievre's "I'm happy the shooter is dead" thing bothered me so much, is because the shooter is dead, we're never going to get answers.
Yeah.
No.
Right? We're never going to know how this came to be, what he was trying to accomplish, any of it. Like,
Plus,
it really seems like we're just not going to know.
As you said, you know, it seemed to, just by what we know so far, that the shooter was led down a path of, you know, all that alt wrong, as Lisa would say.
Yeah.
And it didn't pay off, or it did nothing. Something wasn't working, or whatever happened. So many things got skewed or whatever. The thing that stuck out to me about Poilievre's comment was that he was talking about someone's 20-year-old kid. You're technically an adult, but he's a kid. You see the pictures that they're showing on the news and you're like, oh dear God, he's got braces in the picture. He doesn't have braces necessarily in current day, but he's a kid. And it's like, this is like a bit braggadocious, a bit sort of bravado, machismo, other O's.
It's a kid who made a mistake he can never fix, right? Like,
exactly.
Well, it's a kid that again, we'll never get to the root of what brought him to where he was, right? And that's, they don't want to, right?
And by not finding the answers, how many future X things might not be able to be prevented, right? Like, we don't know, you know, by getting a sense of what led him to where he is, it might be easier to prevent other people from winding up there. And we don't have that opportunity.
How many school shooters did they ever think about doing that to, right? I mean, they've had ample, like the guns in the States, whatever. But I mean, they haven't learned from that.
No.
Right? So why would they want to learn from this? I do want to point out something that the last line in Poilievre's little tweet about democracy must prevail. From this donut that walked alongside people who wanted to overthrow a democratically elected government. Like, how do you look yourself in the mirror every day?
So
I don't understand.
I don't know if either of you watch Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but there's an episode where two characters just start saying, reason will prevail, again and again and again. And so all I hear in my head is like Rob and Mac and Charlie saying, reason will prevail. Every time he says, democracy will prevail. Like, there must be a theory. It's just another verb, the noun.
But I mean, there must be
noun, the verb.
There must be a rhetorical theory in political campaigning, discourse, whatever, that is like a balloon theory. It's like just certain things will rise up enough that the most people will see them, because that's all they see is the top little bit. They don't see the bottom 99% of what's being said or whatever. And maybe people like, you know, Trump who figured out, I'm going to pause here and I'm going to stick my hand up and pump it and say, fight. And God, I hope there's enough blood on my face. You know, if that look, he's like, this is going to rise to the top. This is going to ride that balloon to the top. People are going to see this. They're going to ignore the fact that I'm a convicted felon, that I'm an adjudicated rapist, that it's, you know, they're going to ignore all that other stuff because they're going to see that. That's the only thing that's going to stick out to them.
Yeah, it's the thing that makes it past the noise.
Yeah, and I think that Poilievre is also quite good at that. I think he's actually really good at, I'm not suggesting that he has any other charges against him by any means whatsoever, but I am saying that he is really good at understanding, I think, that people pick up on the top 1% of what's happening. They've got their own lives. They got 1%, and that's all they can see. And I think that we've talked about that before as well. But the problem that the Liberals have is that, you know, if you're explaining, you're losing. And sometimes they spend too much time giving these heart-to-heart talks. And it's like, people don't have time for it.
People want the vibes, though. They want to feel the warm feelings.
Yeah,
they want the soft guitar music and soft lighting while they get a housing policy explained to them.
Yeah, maybe.
The Liberals love that stuff, man.
They do, and that's not my favorite.
No, the videos are always 3.5 minutes too long.
No, you got to do the Poilievre angrily walking towards the camera for a long time thing.
Oh, right.
That's the move.
Sprinting in the rain.
All I can think of in those shots is what the cameraman is doing. Like, do they have a rig so they have the camera behind them, or are they just forced to walk backwards at Poilievre's ridiculous pace?
I think
I hope they're paid well.
Yeah,
It's Poilievre. They're not.
They're probably not union.
Guaranteed they're not union.
I'm not saying you have to be. But he is really good at that, cutting through that, doing that the top of the balloon where he's probably put out 20 hours ago in amongst all this stuff about the CBC Radio Canada board approving bonuses for 2023, 2024, saying, I can't wait to defund the CBC and sell off the headquarters for housing. And it's like that kind of thing. That's what cuts through the noise, because everyone's like, what? CB? Oh my God, I had no idea. Yeah, we should sell them off. And people get all riled up, and you're like, he was wishing a kid, was glad a kid was dead a day ago. And now we're okay. All right. Now CBC board idiots. They should not be doing bonuses. No. Give me a break.
If you're doing layoffs, you're not doing bonuses.
No,
bonus
should
be that
what?
Simple.
Bonus for what if you're getting layoffs? Anyway, but then, as part of that marketing that Poilievre does really well, he does the sign here to defund the CBC. And it's
give us your email to defund the CBC.
It's an email net. That's all it is. It's an email catch net. That's it. It's
and feel free to donate if you're so inclined.
But I mean, it works. It works, and that's the frustrating thing. And it's it doesn't. I guess I always say that the loudest person in the room is usually not the smartest. But it seems like you're in a room with a bunch of very loud people who are super not smart, but smart at being loud.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you used to think that politicians had some sort of special sauce, that they were like really clever, remarkable people in some way?
Yeah.
They knew stuff. Yeah.
Then you talk to one and you're like,
the case.
Well, no, when you start breaking things down, right? If you just look at the one-liners and, the running in the rain and stuff, you think, wow, like I could never do that.
That man runs in the rain.
Right?
He's just like
running in the rain.
That's crazy.
He's gone jogging in jeans in the rain. Seems like a fun thing to do. Also, I can't remember who the guy who's with him is, but he looks so psyched to be running in the rain with Poilievre.
Sure.
He looks like it's the greatest day of his life.
Yeah, no, that's going to keep that guy awake for a while.
Drenched. He's wearing like a big cotton sweater. And he's just
good for him.
Just wringing it out.
It's magnificent.
Exactly.
No, thank you.
It is magnificent.
No, thank you.
Well, we're going to bring the show to a nice almost end here, but I just want to remind everyone that you can subscribe at podcastisbroken.ca. You'll get an email notification each time a new episode comes out. You can also follow and subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform, and we wanted to thank you for watching and listening. But first, before we totally leave you, see, there's a bunch of people just click the off button right now.
I know. I hope they stay till the end.
Me too. If you're one of those people that stayed at the end, you know someone beside you that turned it off, don't tell them what happened. We're going to do, what was your question you'd like us to answer this week?
So I think we should end by making predictions for what will happen in Canada in the next week.
Okay. I'm ready.
So Brittlestar.
Yes.
What do you think will happen in Canada in the coming week?
I suspect in the next week we'll have Mark Carney made Minister of Finance.
Is he going to lose a bet?
He's got nowhere else to go. He's got to move. It's got to be a lateral downward move now. He's head of Bank of Canada, head of Bank of England.
You know where I'd love a ticket? The Titanic.
That'd be great. I think he'll take it because I think that he's got aspirations to get the next election. I think he's like, this is my shot. I'm jumping over. I'm leapfrogging a whole bunch of positions. Boom, minister part of the cabinet, and I'm in there. I'm good.
Fair. Lisa, what do you think's happening?
Okay. I feel like at some point Danielle Smith will blame the feds for something. And she'll totally ignore anything that's happening in Alberta.
Whoa.
So I'll put money on it.
Seriously?
Love it.
I know, right?
So you've all taken this in very different directions than I was planning on.
Okay, so Steve, what do you predict will happen?
My prediction is that Godzilla will rise out of Lake Ontario and attack Toronto and will be fought off by Sean Fraser.
First of all,
you didn't say right answers only. It's a fresh water.
Name one other politician with the vertical to take on Godzilla.
I agree. But he would do it. And the video is going to be amazing.
When I met Sean Fraser, I made a Godzilla joke and he did not get it at all.
It's
Did he hear you?
It's the.
That's the soundbite. That's the soundbite this week.
Did anyone else hear a sound?
I love you, Sean.
There?
I love you, Sean. I can't see.
Fee, fi, fo, fum.
I like how that was double barbed. That was a double barbed joke from Lisa. It made fun of how tall Sean Fraser is and how short Steve is.
The rare twofer. Amazing.
Fantastic.
I had a week. rest. Yeah.
Well, we can't get any higher.
We're all
than
back fresh from the break. There you go.
Exactly. Thanks so much for watching and listening. We'll have more of this insight and hilarity next week. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you then.
Take care of yourselves, folks.
Bye.